You're listening to the Uplevel Your Online Business Show, where wealth is empowering, purpose is crucial, and high vibes are non-negotiable. And now, here's your host, certified business coach and practical woo strategist, Sara J Loureiro.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Uplevel Your Online Business Show with me, Sarah. This episode is going to be all about what types of content there are online right now in the middle of 2025, and specifically what content you will probably want to be focusing on as an online coach or service-based entrepreneur. So, as we know, the online space changes very, very frequently, and I'd be very curious to also see how this episode ages. But there are specific types of content that are, of course, ageless, and we will talk about that as well. So what are the things that are the latest fads that probably aren't going to be worth your time? And what are the pieces of content that are going to stay around for years to come? I'm going to tell you all about the different types of content and what you really should be focusing on. All right, so let's get down to it. I primarily focus on three big platforms within my business coaching programs, although I also help my clients with a few of the other platforms that you can see online. So the primary three that I focus on and the primary three that I could recommend for anyone who's doing high-ticket service-based business are Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Now, why do I recommend these platforms specifically for people who are doing high-ticket one-to-one services and even group services and things like that? Because of your ability to message and interact with people on an intimate one-to-one basis. So the nice thing about these platforms is you can go into your potential clients' profiles. You can find out a lot more about them. You can message them privately. They're just a lot more intimate than any other platform. In terms of which ones you should use out of the three, I get this question a lot from my clients, and here's what I always say. First, we have Facebook. So Facebook is probably the oldest of all of these platforms. It's been around since I was in university. And when I was in university, it was the only platform, and you can only join the platform as a university student. So that was a very interesting part of it. But generally speaking, anyone who is over the age of 35 currently is probably on Facebook. Anyone who's under the age of 35 is probably not on Facebook. So if you want someone who is millennial or older, that's generally speaking who you would find on Facebook as a platform. I also find that Facebook has a lot of really great long-form content. So if you're someone who likes to write a lot, and not necessarily someone who has a lot of visuals, Facebook is also really good for that. And then, of course, Facebook is also good for creating groups. So that's one of the primary strategies that I help my clients with on Facebook is really just filling up a group, connecting with people in the group. And then, of course, it's also really nice because there's a lot of strategies that you can use to convert those people as well. So anyone who has a client base that's over the age of 35, Facebook is a really, really great platform. I find a lot of my clients have really great traction there. Now let's talk about the platform that I am the most familiar with and probably the one that I spend the most time on, which is Instagram. So Instagram is kind of your all-around platform. I would say that it's basically meant for everyone, and it's also a little bit more of a visual platform. So especially if you have a business or a brand that's very visual, Instagram is probably going to work a lot better for you. Instagram is great in that you can also get a lot of really free reach, especially the more that you post and the more consistently that you post on the platform. And so that's a really nice feature, especially here and now in 2025. I've noticed that that has been something that's been a little bit more important to the platform as they prefer creators who are posting and posting really great, consistent, and intentional content. So I always recommend that most of my clients are on Instagram, and most of my clients generally find me on Instagram. That's usually where I do all of my ads as well. But if you are also looking for someone in terms of a ideal client who is more corporate, more professional, LinkedIn is a freaking gold mine, okay? One of the things that I absolutely love about LinkedIn is the fact that you can actually do your own search of your ideal client. You can find your ideal client via industry, via how many people are in their company, via where they actually live, via their actual title in terms of what it is that they do for work. It is very diverse in that sense. The only problem that I have with LinkedIn is that people aren't there very often. So they're not on there consistently unless you have a niche where people are literally spending all their time on LinkedIn. But it is such a great SEO platform, especially for anyone who's looking for a type of client who would be more professional. So those are the three main platforms that I recommend. And then, of course, I have a ton of clients who are on things like YouTube and TikTok, which are both really good, really great for educational content and video content as well. And then, of course, there's also the new guy here in the online space, which is Substack. And so Substack is really great for long form content as well. But in general, what you'll want to decide for yourself is, okay, well, do I like video or do I like writing? Do I like visuals, like photos and really small videos, or do I like editing longer videos? Something like YouTube is going to take you a lot longer because of the fact that you have to edit all of your videos. It's actually a lot easier to edit videos on Instagram or do short form videos on YouTube. But there are less people creating videos on YouTube. So there are less creators in general. So you also have less competition. So it's all up to you which ones you really want to utilize the most. But in terms of creating content and just seeing what has a longer shelf life, generally speaking, the harder it is to create the piece of content, usually the longer shelf life it has, unless of course you spend like 5 hours editing a reel. Generally speaking, a shelf life of a reel in terms of its reach is really only like a few days. But let's say, for example, if you're creating a YouTube video and you create search engine optimization from that YouTube video, your shelf life of that video is going to be in there for years. And I still have people subscribing, believe it or not, to my yoga YouTube channel that I haven't posted to in almost 10 years. And that's just because those videos are still there. People still use them. People still like them. And so they hit subscribe. It's crazy, right? Another really amazing form of content that has a longer shelf life is a blog post. So blogs aren't necessarily something that people are really into anymore. However, blogs can be a really great place that you can use SEO, which is search engine optimization, which in really basic terms is basically if someone's Googling something that you have the answer to, you can show up within Google's top rankings, provided that you SEO your page really well. And so in my first business, and even in this business, I've actually gotten clients just by them searching things that I have in the form of blog posts. And it's really nice to create longer form content in the form of blog posts or in the form of something that is very easily searchable via something like Google, because it could stay there for years and years and years. And so you make it once, but the more people who click on it, the more people who search it, the more likely it is going to end up in Google's top rankings. Speaking of, one of the number one places that I get clients from, aside from all of my work that I do on my Instagram and on my social media profiles, is actually through my podcast, through this exact podcast that you are listening to right now. That's right. But most of my clients don't come through my podcast in terms of finding me through my podcast. I find that most of my clients find me via my social media channels and then get nurtured by me through my podcast. However, every so often, I will get someone who finds my podcast through my SEO. So through Googling something, they find my podcast, they start listening to it. And then by the time that they get on a call with me, they're like, I've listened to all of your episodes. I'm just like so sold. I know that you're the real deal. You sound like you're really genuine. And it just means the world to me when people say that, because they're listening to what it is that I have to say. And not to mention, I have Facebook posts from back 2018, from 2018. I have Instagram posts from 2018. No one's reading those. No one's listening to those, but people are listening to my podcast episodes from 2019. People are listening to my podcast episodes from 2020. People are going through and consuming all of these because they're longer form content. And within the longer form content, it has a longer shelf life because podcast episodes aren't made for people to just consume rapidly. They're actually something that are made for people to consume over a longer period of time. And so when you make things that are both long form and short form and quickly consumable, the same way that an Instagram story is quickly consumable, and then things that can be consumed over time, you actually create a combination of different touch points for your clients. So if you want a business that stands the test of time, you want to create content that is easily searchable by a Google search engine. So things like podcasts, things like blog posts, things like being inside of other people's blogs, being in the media, for example. Those are really great ways to get your name out there and to get yourself well known that will stay on a Google search engine. Versus it's also equally as important in the short term to make sure that people know what you're doing on a daily basis. So if you have your Instagram stories, if you have your Facebook stories, when you're posting content, you want to make sure that you're doing that consistently. If you have an email list, you want to make sure you're doing that consistently. At least weekly, you want to make sure that you're top of mind for your ideal clients so they can know exactly where to find you. And so once you create this for yourself and once you create your ideal, you're just going to want to do it consistently. The beautiful thing about this is that some of these pieces of content that you create are literally going to be there forever. So this is why it's also so important for you to not pivot your niche every 2 seconds like some people really want to, and just kind of stay the course and really see through the longevity of what it is your marketing message is. This is also why it's so important to develop a niche early on that you're going to be obsessed with, that you're really, really clear about, so you're not changing your mind. Because if you have a niche that stands the test of time, then you literally have people who will be searching for you, seeing content that you've had for the past 5 years, and then signing up with you with no problem at all because they see your credibility for how long you've been in the business. And so I hope that answers a lot of your questions in terms of what types of content you should be posting and where you should be posting it. And hopefully you can come up with your own creative way of managing the content. Remember that you don't need to be everywhere. That is the definition of burning out. And so I would highly recommend that you only pick 2 or 3 places that you're going to be consistently, unless you already have a team that can also help you manage multiple platforms at once. But pick 2 or 3 places maximum that you're going to be consistently, and just stick to that for a minimum of 90 days. Be really consistent with your content. And I can promise you that if you're in business for long enough, you're going to see those amazing results. So, hope you like this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Uplevel Your Online Business Show. If you enjoy our show and would like the show notes and free goodies about how to grow your online coaching business, head over to sarajloureiro.com for more information. We hope you'll tune in next time.